Hello friends, welcome back to the series of lectures of coagulants and anticoagulants. In other words, drugs acting on hemostatic mechanisms. We have already discussed about coagulants. So in this session, we will be discussing about anticoagulants. What are anticoagulants? At the end of the session, you should be aware, you should be knowing about the various anticoagulants and their uses. Anticoagulants are the drugs which block coagulation of blood. In short, it does not allow blood clotting. If we classify them, they can be broadly classified into in vivo anticoagulants and in vitro anticoagulants. In vivo, that means anticoagulants which can be used for preventing of blood clots inside the body, and in vitro means outside the body when blood is collected for testing investigations. In vivo anticoagulants again can be subclassified into parenteral anticoagulants and oral anticoagulants. In vitro drugs can be heparin, which is natural anticoagulant, and calcium complexing agents. Now let us see further about in vivo anticoagulants. In vivo anticoagulants, as we have seen, they are of two types, parenteral and oral. Parenteral can be subclassified again as indirect thrombin inhibitors, that means heparin, low molecular weighted heparin, heparinoids like fondaparinux, idraparinux, encrode, etc. Direct thrombin inhibitors, liperidine, bivalirudine, ergotroban, etc. Oral anticoagulants can be coumarin derivatives, bis-hydroxycoumarin, warfarin sodium, acinocomural, etc. Direct factor 10A inhibitor, that is rivaroxaban. Direct thrombin inhibitor, dabigatran ethoxylate. In olden days, indranedione derivative, phenyldione was also used, but nowadays it is not used due to higher toxicities. In vitro anticoagulants are the anticoagulants which does not allow blood clotting when it is taken for investigation. They are heparin. Heparin is required for 150 units for 100 150 unit will prevent clotting of 100 ml of blood. Calcium complexing agents like sodium citrate, sodium oxalate, sodium edetate. These things you might have learnt in pathology. Now let us talk about heparin first. Heparin was discovered by a medical student namely MacLean in 1916, and it was extracted from liver. As it was extracted from liver, Howell and Holt, they named it heparin in 1918. From 1937, it is used clinically after sufficient purification. Heparin, if we look to the chemistry, it's a straight chain mucopolysaccharide having molecular weight ranging from 5,000 to 30,000. Heparin is present in mast cells, which is loosely bound to the granular proteins. Heparin is present in almost all tissues which contain mast cells. The richest source is liver, lungs and intestinal mucosa. If we look to the action of heparin, there are three main actions of heparin. First and foremost is it's anticoagulant. Then second is lipemia clearing, and it also blocks inflammatory changes in the thrombus. Now let us look for the anticoagulant action first. It's powerful in quick acting anticoagulant. We have seen in last session that there are certain endogenous anticoagulants like antithrombin 3, that is the endogenous anticoagulant. There are 4 types of endogenous anticoagulants: heparin like substance, antithrombin 3 and etc. So this antithrombin 3 slowly inactivates factor 10 and factor 2A. Antithrombin 3 is a serine protease inhibitor which activated factor 10 and factor 2. That is the endogenous anticoagulant, but it is very slow. When heparin binds to the antithrombin 3, It binds to the clotting factor fastly. Other clotting factors also 2, 10, 9, 11, 12 and 13. They all are inhibited and they are inactivated fast. Low doses of heparin can inhibit thrombus formation while large doses are required to prevent extension of thrombus. We have to remember that higher doses of heparin for longer period of time will cause downregulation or deactivation of AT3 levels in the blood. So if we stop heparin suddenly, then there will be rebound, increased coagulability of blood. So therefore, heparin, if a patient is put on heparin therapy for a longer period of time, usually heparin is not continued for longer period of time, but if a patient is put on longer period of time with heparin therapy, it should be tapered slowly. It should not be stopped abruptly. Other actions, it inhibits angiogenesis. That means thrombus-induced inflammatory changes are inhibited, as heparin does possess some of the anti-inflammatory properties. Lower doses of heparin, lower than anticoagulant dose, can cause lipemia clearing. IV injection heparin will release lipoprotein lipase from the endothelium, and that will hydrolyze triglycerides and will cause VLDL and chylomicron clearing. Heparin on higher dose has got antiplatelet action as well. It inhibits platelet aggregation and prolongs bleeding time, but it can cause hemorrhagic complications. Low molecular weighted heparin, unfractioned heparin is fractionized into low molecular weighted form. The molecular weight ranges from 3000 to 7000 and it is done by different techniques. Low molecular weighted heparin selectively inhibit factor 10 with negligible effect on factor 2. It also brings confirmatory change, structural change in AT3 also, antithrombin 3 receptor, but it has got less protein binding, so we can predict the effect of low molecular weighted heparin. So it is more predictable dose response. It does have more predictable dose response relationship. Low molecular weighted heparin preparations available in the market are denaperoid, dalteparin, enoxaparin and tinzaparin. Dalteparin, it is used for prophylactic and these drugs are used for prevention of plaque formation, clot formation in the veins. Prophylactically, 2500 units are given 1 to 2 hours prior to surgery, followed by 2500 units per day for 7 to 10 days. And therapeutically, if a venous clot is formed, low molecular weighted heparin can be given and dalteparin can be given 100 units per kg. It is given on kg dose twice a day for 5 days. Enoxaparin and tinzaparin are also another preparations available in the market. Reviparin, nadoparin, etc. are available. As compared to unfractioned heparin, route of administration of low molecular weighted heparin is subcutaneous, while unfractioned heparin has to be given IV. Mind well friends, heparin or low molecular weighted heparin or any heparinoids cannot be given by intramuscular route, otherwise it will cause erythema formation. So either it has to be given by IV or subcutaneously. And low molecular weighted heparin can be given subcutaneously. The bioavailability is more predictable and longer. Now let us have difference between unfractioned heparin and low molecular weighted heparin. If we compare the molecular weight, average molecular weight of unfractioned heparin is 1500, ranging from 5000 to 30,000, whereas low molecular weighted heparin has got 4000 to 6500. I am sorry, here it is 15,000, not 1500. Main factors inhibited by unfractioned heparin is factor 10 and factor 2. whereas low molecular weighted heparin does not have action on factor 2. It is inhibitor of only factor 10. Subcutaneous bioavailability of unfractioned heparin is low, whereas that is higher with low molecular weighted heparin. Duration is shorter with unfractioned heparin, whereas low molecular weighted heparin acts for longer period of time. Bleeding is very common with unfractioned heparin, whereas that is as compared to unfractioned heparin, low molecular weighted heparin has got less bleeding chances. Plasma protein binding of unfractioned heparin is higher than that of low molecular weighted heparin. Antiplatelet action of unfractioned heparin is more than low molecular weighted heparin. If we look to the pharmacokinetic potentials, unfractioned heparin is metabolized by the enzyme heparinase, which is present in liver and taken up by reticuloendothelial cells and macrophages, whereas low molecular weighted heparin are excreted unchanged through kidney. Unfractioned heparin does not have renal excretion. Chances of thrombocytopenia is more common with unfractioned heparin. Osteoporosis also is seen more with unfractioned heparin. When a patient is put on unfractioned heparin, continuous lab monitoring is required, whereas if a patient is given low molecular weighted heparin, we do not need lab monitoring. Effect of antidote, that is protamine sulfate, is complete on unfractioned heparin, whereas on low molecular weighted heparin it is partial. If we compare the cost, low unfractioned heparin is economical, whereas low molecular weighted heparin is expensive. When a patient is put on unfractioned heparin, we need hospitalization, whereas patient can be treated on OPD basis if we treat with low molecular weighted heparin. Friends, these are the some comparative aspects which may be asked in exam as a short note. Fondaparinux is heparinoid, that is synthetic pentasaccharide. Only the active portion having molecular weight 1500 that binds to AT3 receptors. AT3 mediated selective inhibition of factor 10A only and interrupt the coagulation cascade. It does not have any action on thrombin formation, so no chance of bleeding. If we compare the mechanism of action of unfractioned heparin, low molecular weighted heparin and fondaparinux, this figure will easily explain the mechanism of action of these three anticoagulants. Then we talk about heparinoids. Heparan sulfate, that is the natural substance, endogenous substance that is found on the cell surface and intracellular matrix. It's a less potent anticoagulant. Encrode is the enzyme which is obtained from Malayan pit viper venom. It degrades the fibrinogen into fibrin in the unstable form, and this fibrin strands will be taken up by reticuloendothelial cells. Fibrinogen gets depleted and heparin-like effect is seen. For the patient who cannot be treated with heparin or low molecular weighted heparin, can be treated with Encrode in the dose of 2 units per kg over 6 hours for DVT patients, deep vein thrombosis in patients with having hypersensitivity or thrombocytopenia due to heparin. In short, those patients who have contraindication to be treated with heparin can be treated with Encrode. Then we talk about direct thrombin inhibitors. Direct thrombin inhibitors are the drugs which do not need antithrombin 3 receptor, antithrombin 3 as a receptor. They directly bind to the thrombin and inhibit the effect of formation of thrombin in the coagulation cascade. They also can be divided into parenteral and oral. Parenteral direct thrombin inhibitors are hirudine, that is irreversible inhibitor, which is obtained from leech salivary glands. Lepyridine is recombinant fraction of hirudine. Other drugs are bivalirudine, desirudine, denaperoid. Denaperoid is 84% heparan sulfate plus 12% dermatan plus 4% chondroitin sulfate that is obtained from pig mucosa. And this is especially given for patients who develop thrombocytopenia, which is due to heparin. Direct inhibitors may be direct thrombin inhibitors or direct factor 10 inhibitor. Dabigatran ethoxylate is direct thrombin inhibitor, whereas rivaroxaban is factor 10 inhibitor. Both of them can be given orally. When we talk about oral anticoagulants, we have to talk about, we cannot forget about warfarin sodium, bis-hydroxycoumarin and acidocoumarol like coumarin derivatives. If we look to the mechanism of action of oral anticoagulants like warfarin, warfarin inhibit with the synthesis of vitamin K dependent clotting factors in liver. There are the formation of clotting factors like 2, 7, 9, 10 have to be get activated with the formation of with the help of reduced vitamin K, and that gets oxidized, converted into oxidized vitamin K. Now this cycle has to be repeated. Oxidized vitamin K has to get reduced vitamin K to activate the clotting factors for synthesis of clotting factors in liver, whereas this step is inhibited by warfarin. There are two enantiomers of warfarin available in the market, S and R enantiomer. Both of them can inhibit vitamin K oxidase reductase enzyme and does not allow vitamin K to be reactivated. Friends, this is a very common question which is asked, heparin versus warfarin, compare and contrast heparin versus warfarin. So here are some points which are comparative aspects. If we look to the chemical nature of heparin, that is a mucopolysaccharide, whereas warfarin is coumarin derivative. The source of heparin is obtained from animal tissues, either porcine intestine or bovine lungs, from the pig intestine or cow or ox lungs, whereas warfarin is a synthetic product. Anticoagulant effect is seen in vivo as well as in vitro of heparin, whereas warfarin does not have in vitro effect, it is effective in vivo only. If we compare the route of administration, heparin has to be given parenterally, either intravenously or subcutaneously, whereas warfarin is oral anticoagulant. If we compare the onset of action, IV administration of heparin will have immediate anticoagulant action. If it is given by subcutaneous route, onset of action is 1 hour and it cannot be given orally. Whereas warfarin has to be given orally, but the onset of action is 1 to 3 days because it inhibits the synthesis of clotting factors. But what about the clotting factors which are already been formed, synthesized? So till those clotting factors get depleted, warfarin will not have its action. The plasma half-life of heparin is dose dependent. Average plasma half-life is 80 minutes, whereas warfarin acts for longer period of time, 36 hours. Duration of action of heparin is shorter, whereas that is longer of warfarin. If we compare the mechanism of action, heparin has to, indirectly it has to combine with AT3 and inhibits the clotting factors in the coagulation cascade, and it will interrupt the coagulation cascade, whereas warfarin will have inhibit the synthesis of vitamin K dependent clotting factor 2, 7, 9, 10. Furthermore, heparin can be preferred for initiation of therapy, whereas warfarin has to be thought for maintenance of therapy. If we compare about drug interaction, heparin does not have or minimal or insignificant drug interaction, whereas when we are giving warfarin, we have to keep in mind that warfarin has got many and significant drug interaction. There are many drugs which can either which can have more action of warfarin, and there are certain drugs which can terminate the action of warfarin faster. When a patient is put on heparin therapy, activated partial thromboplastin time is the monitoring test, whereas prothrombin time is the monitoring test for warfarin. Antidote in case of overdose available for heparin is protamine sulfate, whereas for patient who is put on oral anticoagulant therapy, the antidote of warfarin is vitamin K, which we have already learnt in last session, with fresh blood transfusion. Friends, the reason for giving fresh blood transfusion is the clotting factors which are not synthesized, which are inhibited to be synthesized with warfarin, will be replenished with the fresh blood transfusion. If we talk about safety during pregnancy, heparin cannot cross placental barrier, so it is safe during pregnancy, whereas warfarin is teratogenic, so it is not safe to be given during pregnancy. If we compare the cost, heparin is expensive and warfarin is inexpensive or economical. Here I have shared one YouTube link of video which clearly says the difference between heparin and warfarin. Now friends, let us talk about uses of anticoagulants. Friends, before we move on to the uses, one thing should be very clear. Heparin or warfarin will inhibit intravascular clot formation in the veins, whereas in the arteries the clot formation is inhibited by antiplatelet agents. They prevent the thrombus extension and embolic complication, but they do not dissolve the clot. That means it does not have thrombolytic effect. It does not allow the clot to be formed in the venous blood. So the uses of anticoagulant will be, first and foremost, is prevention and treatment of deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolism, unstable angina and myocardial infarction. Actually, in this cases, antiplatelet agents would be more useful, but sometimes combination therapy is also required in the rheumatic heart disease and miscellaneous. Let us see in short all uses of anticoagulants. For prevention and treatment of deep vein thrombosis, for a patient who is for a longer period of time, who is bedridden, or elderly patients, or who are undergoing any hip or leg fracture or any surgical procedures, intermittent low dose heparin 5000 international units subcutaneously can be given for 8 to 12 hourly, or low molecular weighted heparin enoxaparin 30 mg subcutaneously can be given for 12 hours, followed by warfarin tablet 10 to 15 mg per day till patient becomes ambulatory. For prevention and treatment of pulmonary embolism, actually subcutaneous fondaparinux is preferred, especially for patients who are undergoing orthopedic surgeries. 5 to 10 mg subcutaneously once a day till patient becomes ambulatory. Alternative therapy would be with heparin or warfarin, but fondaparinux, if patient can afford, is better option. For the treatment of unstable angina and myocardial infarction, especially to prevent further attacks of myocardial infarction, antiplatelet drugs are preferred, aspirin or clopidogrel or prasugrel, but to reduce the chances of MI, sometimes heparin and warfarin also can be combined, especially to prevent secondary complications. And before CABG or angioplasty, aspirin has to be stopped, or antiplatelet has to be stopped, and to prevent intrasurgery, during surgery complications, we have to give heparin therapy. For rheumatic heart disease, warfarin or low dose heparin or low dose aspirin is preferred to prevent thrombosis or embolism from the atrial fibrillation. Miscellaneous uses are treatment of disseminated intravascular coagulation DIC patients, treatment of retinal embolism. For anticoagulation during pregnancy, heparin is preferred because, as we have seen, it does not cross placental barrier. Friends, now let us talk about adverse effects of anticoagulants. Obviously, bleeding can be considered as a result of extension of desired effect, or over-treatment with anticoagulant would lead to bleeding. That will be reflected as ecchymosis, epistaxis, hematuria, GIT bleeding. Sometimes, if it is very higher dose, then intracranial bleeding or internal hemorrhages also can occur. Other side effects: frequent GI disturbances, bloody diarrhea, hematomasis, oral ulceration, alopecia, dermatitis, etc. Some serious side effects, especially seen with heparin. Heparin would induce thrombocytopenia, so more bleeding would occur. If a patient is put on higher dose of heparin for longer period of time, that will deplete AT3 level. So sudden stoppage of heparin would lead to rebound, increased coagulability. So we cannot stop heparin abruptly if it is given for longer period of time. What can be the treatment of ADR and overdose? Obviously, withdraw the anticoagulant. Give fresh blood transfusion. That will replenish the lost blood, plus it will supply clotting factors and replenish the clotting factors. Or if patient is cannot tolerate whole blood, then fresh frozen plasma also can be given. And depending upon the anticoagulant, we can give specific antidote. If patient is put on heparin therapy and overdose at ADR is seen with heparin, we can give protamine sulfate, or if it is treated by warfarin, then vitamin K1 is the specific antidote with oral anticoagulants. We have already discussed about vitamin K1. Now let us talk about protamine sulfate. Protamine sulfate is strongly basic, low molecular weighted protein. It can be given intravenously, which can neutralize heparin on weight-to-weight basis. 1 milligram is required for every 100 units of heparin. It can be used for heparin-induced bleeding, heparin overdose, especially after cardiac or vascular surgery when we need heparin action to be terminated rapidly, then protamine sulfate can be given. But mind well, it's a very basic substance. It will release histamine and can cause hypersensitivity. And rapid IV injection of protamine sulfate itself can cause flushing and respiratory difficulty. So it has to be given very judiciously and slowly. In short, if we summarize today's topic, at the end of the session, you should be able to know the salient aspect of anticoagulants. We have seen the salient aspects of anticoagulants, both types of anticoagulants, parenteral and oral, uses of parenteral and oral anticoagulants, difference between heparin and low molecular weighted heparin, difference between heparin and warfarin, and you should be knowing about uses and adverse events of anticoagulants along with the name of antidotes. That's all about anticoagulants. Thank you.